MeMonster.
Chapter 56. You have 3 lives. Whoever can hit a target farther away wins. This archery duel followed the general rules of archery competitions. I had seen heroes have archery battles on TV a few times, though those always had extra effects, like earthquakes or explosions. "Am I going first?" Chain Ayun asked. "Yeah." "All right. 100 meters is too easy, so let's start at 200 meters. Chain Ayun knocked an arrow and pulled back the bowstring. Her sharp eyes focused on the 200-meter mark, waiting for the target to shoot up. Shot! With her short shout, the target shot up from the right side. Chain Ayun turned her bow 60 degrees to the right and fired, hitting the target 200 meters away with ease. Chain Ayun crossed her arms with a smile, looking at me arrogantly. I clumsily copied her posture. With my feet spread apart, I placed my center of gravity between my legs. I knocked my arrow and gripped the bow and bowstring tightly. Now, was it voice recognition? "Shot," I muttered. And a target shot up. Startled, I let go of the bowstring. Naturally, the arrow missed by a wide margin. Chain Ayun laughed, grabbing her belly with one hand and pointing at me with the other. "Did you really not practice? Do you want to start over from the 100-meter mark?" I shook my head. It's a handicap. Although I failed once, I got a feel for how to position myself. Chain Ayun had a textbook posture, but I didn't need to do the same. Textbook postures were meant for practical use, but you couldn't become an expert just by perfecting them. They were only the minimum requirement, and my gift made me a natural master. I have to go again, right? Yeah, you only have 2 lives now, so you're out if you miss twice." I nodded and stood tall. I didn't need to take aim. The target moved anyway, so there was no reason to aim beforehand. Shot. The target shot up. I predicted its trajectory and fired so that it would just miss. The arrow grazed the target. Is this a joke? I was putting on a show, but Chain Ayun seemed to lose interest. The spectators started calling me a big-mouthed fool desperate for attention. Missing 2 in a row was too much. I got the feeling for it now. "Yeah, right. I'm going again." I muttered quickly. Shot. This time, I fired the moment the target shot up to about 2 meters. My arrow flew through the sky and pierced the target perfectly. "Oh?" Chain Ayun seemed surprised at how quickly I fired. The spectators were surprised too. With a relaxed smile, I gestured at Chain Ayun. "You're up. No pressure." "I guess you did practice." Now the distance was 250 meters. Chain Ayun glared at the distance, bowstring pulled. Shot. The target shot up, zigzagging through the air. After a moment's thought, Chain Ayun fired. Her arrow pierced the center of the target. It was still easy for her. "You're up next." The following back and forth was extremely boring. We each took our turns firing and hitting our targets. However, the spectators didn't seem bored. They watched us with excitement in their eyes. 300 meters, 350 meters, 400 meters, 450 meters, the distance kept increasing until it reached 500 meters. From this distance, the target was barely visible to the naked eye. Chain Ayun's arms began to tremble with nervousness. If I was right, she would soon self-destruct. Chain Ayun's personality was not suited to being a sharpshooter. She wasn't patient and was easily shaken and angered. She wasn't the type to win in a tense competition like this. Shot. Even so, Chain Ayun calmed herself with a deep breath and fired. Ah! Her arrow brushed past the target. She missed for the first time at the 500-meter mark. I could tell she was shaken. Shot. She managed to succeed on her next try, but now she only had 2 lives left. She breathed out a sigh of relief. Whew. But Chain Ayun would not be able to surpass the 600-meter mark. I would force her hand. To pressure her psychologically, I shouted as soon as her turn finished. Shot. I fired immediately, and the arrow pierced the center of the target. With a darkened expression, Chain Ayun held up her bow again, but I stopped her. Since we're at the halfway mark, I'll go first from now on." Without waiting for her answer, I held up my bow and nocked an arrow. Shot. The target shot up from the 550-meter mark, but I could see it as if it was only 1 meter away. It was a bird-shaped doll covered in black cloth. My eyes could predict its path. After calculating the speed of my arrow, I fired at the bird doll's glimmering silhouette. Just like before, my arrow pierced the target perfectly. You're up next. Chain Ayun, who was staring at the target in a daze, flinched. Her lips were dry and she swallowed hard before silently holding up her bow. "You know it too, right?" Before she could fire, I provoked her. I was talking to shake her mentality. "You suck at using a bow." Chain Ayun immediately glared at me. In reality, hitting a 550-meter target without using magic power was impressive, because wooden arrows couldn't ignore air resistance even with a high-quality bow. But being impressive wasn't enough for Chain Ayun. Just being decent at shooting wouldn't let her accomplish her goal. "But why?" "Shot." Chain Ayun shouted loudly, cutting me off. Gritting her teeth, she fired at the target. But impatient archers could never hit their mark. Chain Ayun's arrow flew past the target. "But why do you insist on using a bow?" I got curious, so I thought about it. "Shut up!" Chain Ayun shouted in frustration. Shot. This time she focused as much as she could and fired. She managed to hit the target. I shouted back without giving her a chance to rest. Shot. My target shot up before the remnants of Chain Ayun's target even hit the ground. I fired, and the target was instantly destroyed. I didn't feel pressure, but Chain Ayun's face began to pale. I continued. "Deep inside, you know it too. You're more talented with swords." Chain Ayun didn't become Yusiak's disciple for nothing. As a master rank hero, Yusiak didn't care about backgrounds. He only chose disciples based on talent. Chain Ayun was one of the so-called children of Yusiak. "I said shut up!" Chain Ayun blurted out in rage. I held up my bow. Now it was the 600-meter mark. Unless magic power arrows were used, the maximum range for the light bow in my hand was 1.4 kilometers. Although 600 meters wasn't even half that distance, 1.4 kilometers was just the maximum range. The realistic range, which even professional archers could only hit with 50% accuracy, was half that distance. And in this competition, targets were flying through the air. The current Chain Ayun simply was incapable of hitting a target at this distance. You're scared. You're scared of fighting with a sword, and you're scared of being drenched in blood. That's how she was in the original story. Her mother's murder left a deep trauma, but in this timeline, her trauma was even deeper because of what happened with her older brother. That's why you justify yourself every day, that you're just as talented with a bow, that you can become the greatest hero even with a bow. I took a breath. But with a bow, you won't be able to kill a single djinn, much less get revenge for your older brother. That was the killing blow. Tak! Chain Ayun let go of her bowstring. Her arrow flew through the empty sky, marking her third failure. She had lost. "What did you just say?" Chain Ayun glared at me, eyes full of rage. From her hands gripping the bow, I could see blood oozing out. "With that strength, you should use a sword." I stared into the distance. Then I shouted, "Shot." Not once, not twice, but 3 times. 600 meters, 650 meters, 700 meters. 3 targets shot up into the air with little delay. I quickly fired 3 times, and the 3 arrows pierced the 3 targets. I didn't stop there. I wanted to know the limit of grade 6 of master sharpshooter. Since Chain Ayun was finished, I continued shooting by myself. 750 meters, 800 meters. The atmosphere grew heavier as the distance increased, and Chain Ayun's heavy breathing became louder. I could feel her stinging breath, filled with anger and defeat. 900 meters. I'll stop here. I felt like 900 meters was my limit, so I gave up after that. I didn't want to try the 950-meter mark where I had a high chance of failure. 550 meters versus 900 meters. My victory, right? I looked at Shane Ayun. Before I noticed, her glaring eyes had filled with tears. Shane Ayun couldn't win against her anger. Normally, she would have jumped at me for mentioning her older brother. But she probably didn't want to seem like she was making a fuss after losing. I got lucky. I grinned and held out my hand to Shane Ayun. Her face twisted. Unsurprisingly, she didn't shake my hand. What do you want? Instead, Shane Ayun muttered briefly. Unexpectedly, she accepted her loss easily. I smiled. Nothing. I want nothing. If I forced her to give up being an archer, she would do so in frustration and regret. But if she didn't give up on her own, if she couldn't overcome her attachment to bows and her fear of close combat, she wouldn't reach the apex of swordsmanship. And I knew she could overcome her fear and trauma. She always grew through frustration, defeat, and anger. That shouldn't have changed. But I want you to think for yourself what your gift is, what your talent is. I said as I pushed my hair up. Maybe because I focused too much, I was sweating quite a bit. Then I remembered the bow I was holding belonged to Shane Ayun. Oh, and I'll take this bow. Even the cheapest bow cost millions of won. I had to save money where I could. Shane Ayun didn't seem to mind, or maybe she didn't even hear that last part. Her shoulders trembled slightly. She was crying quietly. I turned around without saying more and left the archery range where only the sound of wind remained. At the same time, on the highest floor of a 5-star hotel in Seoul, "Boss, are you really going? You don't have to go yourself, you know." "I am." Boss nodded. "I'll go examine him myself." "You're fixated on something again." Boss was very adamant. Without a choice, Jane released her magic power. Covering Boss's face, a new face appeared. Jane's gift could be used on someone else as long as that person was within 10 kilometers range. Using her gift, Jane changed Boss's face and physique to that of a certain cadet. So do we just wait somewhere under the sea? After finishing her operation, Jane murmured as she studied Boss's expression. "Jane, are you scared?" "No, I'm not scared. It's just that, Yoon Sung-ah, that crazy woman, might come." Yoon Sung-ah and Jane were like cats and dogs. If Yoon Sung-ah came as an exam overseer, Jane wasn't confident. Confident in letting her live? I missed that ring because of her. If I see her again, I don't think I can hold myself back. Boss stared at Jane quietly before nodding. "Then just wait somewhere nearby." "Okay. Oh, and here, it's the detail of the cadet Boss is disguising as. At least glance over it." Jane gave Boss a thick stack of paper. Jane could copy her target's appearance and habits, but the latter only applied to herself. Boss began to read the document with the cadet's background. "You're good at acting, right, Boss?" "Of course." "Okay." 3 weeks remained to the final exam. Chapter 57. When Chae Na-yoon easily struck the target 200 meters away, the spectators broke into applause. Chae Na-yoon was an amazing archer. That's what everyone felt, including Kim Soo-ho. He looked around at the other archers watching the match. Since it was an archery duel, about 10 cadets with bows hung on their backs were present. Chae Na-yoon's posture is amazing. She's been doing it for a long time. Yeah, but still, how can it be so perfect? They began to comment on the match. Kim Soo-ho, Shin Jang-hak, Yoo Yen-ha, and Lee Young-han, who didn't know much about archery, naturally listened to their explanations. At that moment, Kim Hajin fired. His first arrow missed the mark by a mile. The hell! His posture is completely off. Kim Soo-ho kept his ear on the commentators and his eyes on the archery duel. Kim Hajin fired a second shot, which missed again. No, he changed his bow's direction at the last second. He missed on purpose. Huh? Why would he do that? I don't know. Then Kim Ha-jin fired his third arrow. This time, his arrow hit the target perfectly. See? He missed his second shot on purpose. Okay, but why? Man, I don't know. For now, Kim Soo-ho continued to watch their duel. But I've never seen him before at the archery range. At that moment, one of the cadets muttered. There were two facilities for sharpshooter cadets, the shooting range and the archery range. Usually, the shooting range was used by cadets to practice archery with magic power, while the archery range was for pure, traditional archery. Also, there were only a few archery ranges first years could use, so most first-year sharpshooters had seen each other at least once. Have you seen him? No, I haven't. Maybe he comes after midnight. Now that's when I'm here, from midnight to 3, and I've never seen him. Kim Soo-ho was at a loss for words. Did Kim Hajin really not practice at all? But Kim Hajin's archery was too sharp and quick for that to be true. His arrows chased after the target like a starving wild beast. Soon, the archers began to compare their practice hours to discuss this mystery. Their busy conversation stopped when the distance reached 400 meters. Kim Hajin was shooting too well. One of the cadets muttered in a daze, 450-meter mark is my record. But soon, Kim Hajin easily surpassed the 450-meter mark. The noisy crowd slowly quieted, and the sound of hard swallowing increased. Ah, Chae Na-yoon missed. At 500 meters, Chae Na-yoon missed for the first time. On the other hand, Kim Hajin succeeded just as easily as before. The same thing happened at the 550-meter mark. When Chae Na-yoon missed a second time, Kim Soo-ho realized she would lose. Now it was the 600-meter mark. Kim Soo-ho could see Kim Hajin saying something to Chae Na-yoon, but they were too far away for him to hear. Curious, he focused his magic power on his ears. But with a bow, you won't be able to kill a single Dijin, much less get revenge for your older brother. Kim Soo-ho frowned. What is he? Perhaps because of what he said, Chae Na-yoon failed again at the 600-meter mark. Chae Na-yoon immediately gave Kim Hajin a fierce glare, but Kim Hajin ignored her and concentrated on shooting. Whoa, what the hell? At that moment, other archers exclaimed in shock. Kim Hajin had shot down 3 targets at the 600, 650, and 700-meter marks. Kim Soo-ho had to admit his Kim Hajin's technique was like a form of art. But seemingly unsatisfied, Kim Hajin continued. Kim Soo-ho stared at him with mixed feelings. On the other hand, Yoo Yeon-ha was watching Kim Hajin with satisfaction. His performance was exactly what she expected. Furthermore, she felt what he showed today was only a tiny fraction of his real power. She couldn't help but wonder how much of his real strength he was hiding. What is he? I don't know. It must be a specialized gift. A nameless archer put out an idea. Hearing the word specialized gift, Yoo Yeon-ha strained her ears. Specialized gift. Just like its name suggests, it was a gift specialized for a certain role. Although it wasn't a showy gift like Kim Soo-ho's or Shin Jong-hak's, specialized gifts stood at the peak of the field they specialized in. Furthermore, most people with specialized gifts had an additional gift. Because of this, specialized gifts were rare and valuable. Then there's no way Chae Na-yoon can beat him in pure archery, not unless she uses magic power. But Kim Hajin uses a gun. It was determined that his gift was the greatest gun-related gift. Maybe his specialized gift is for bows, and his other gift is for guns. Wow, then imagine if they were both for bows. That wouldn't be fair. If that was the case, he would be in the same league as Jin Se-an. Hearing that, the archers nodded in agreement. For the record, Jin Se-an was Korea's master rank hero, titled the Divine Archer. At that moment, Kim Hajin turned around after hitting the 900-meter mark target. Facing him, the archers suddenly froze. In the dead silence that followed, Kim Hajin walked past the crowd of spectators. Kim Soo-ho eyed him as he walked by, and Kim Hajin did the same, expressionless. Soon, Kim Hajin completely passed by Kim Soo-ho, and Kim Soo-ho stared at Chae Na-yoon, who was left alone in the huge lane. Kim Soo-ho began to walk towards her. Na-yoon! Chae Na-yoon's body jolted. Standing an appropriate distance away, Kim Soo-ho picked out the words to comfort her. I heard from the other guys, it seems Kim Hajin has a specialized... It's fine. But Chae Na-yoon interrupted him. I'm not in the mood to talk. And specialized gift or not, that means there is a difference in our talents. Kim Soo-ho, Na-yoon, don't be so hard on yourself. Just leave. The entire time, Chae Na-yoon refused to turn around. Okay, In the end, Kim Soo-ho returned helplessly. At the same time, he caught sight of a man staring at him with a big smile on his face. You should know your place. Move over. Shin Jong-hak sneered at him and began to walk towards Chae Na-yoon. However, Yu Yan-ha carefully grabbed Shin Jong-hak's sleeve, trying to hold him back. Jong-hak, I think you should leave her alone for now. No, I'm different. Despite Yu Yan-ha's dissuasion, he confidently walked up to Chae Na-yoon. Chae Na-yoon, I think you're... I said leave! Chae Na-yoon's thunderous roar startled Shin Jong-hak. Chae Na-yoon, I'm not Kim Soo-ho, I'm Shin Jong-hak. Somewhat in a daze, he placed his hand on Chae Na-yoon's shoulder. Chae Na-yoon immediately smacked his hand away. I said leave! Screw off! Didn't I tell you? By the time Shin Jong-hak returned to Yu Yan-ha with a devastated face, Chae Na-yoon was running into the forest. Yu Yan-ha watched her leave with a grin, happy to see Chae Na-yoon running away after being completely stomped on. But separately from her heated emotions, her cold reasoning was working on a plan. Helping someone when they were down was the most effective way of making connections.
Chae Na-yoon had a grade 1 priority in Yu Yan-ha's connection management list. Just being a fourth-generation chaebol was enough to give her that grade, but her family conglomerate wasn't one that ran a guild. In other words, she was the greatest connection she could bring into her guild. Don't worry, I'll console her. Yu Yan-ha began to run after Chae Na-yoon. Not long after, she discovered Chae Na-yoon sitting crouched down behind a bush. With her face buried between her knees, she was shaking up and down. Na-yoon? When Yu Yan-ha called her, she trembled, but didn't respond. Yu Yan-ha quietly sat down next to her, and Chae Na-yoon waddled to the side in response. Yu Yan-ha didn't say anything. She only occasionally signaled to Chae Na-yoon that she was still there, all the while waiting patiently. She had to wait for quite a while. The wind blew, leaves fell, and the sky began to grow dark. After about 30 minutes, Chae Na-yoon raised her head, wiping her tears as she sobbed. Yu Yan-ha. She then called Yu Yan-ha, who responded with a casual, gentle voice. Yeah? Chae Na-yoon opened her mouth within the forest's silence. Did you guys not hear him? Hear what? He mentioned Appa. Really? We were too far. Yu Yan-ha was genuinely surprised. To Chae Na-yoon, her older brother was a bottom line that shouldn't be crossed. The reverse scale of a dragon that shouldn't be touched. Every cadet took special care not to mention him, even by accident. Yeah, that bastard. That was the second time. Chae Na-yoon couldn't even continue her sentence. She was burning up from a mix of embarrassment and rage. She wanted to let it out, chase after him and punish him, but because she was so thoroughly crushed, she didn't have the strength to do so. When seeing this, Yu Yan-ha scratched her neck. Things had gotten more complicated than she expected. Yu Yan-ha disliked Chae Na-yoon, but she also wanted to make her into her ally. But the same could be said for Kim Hajin, and he was even a benefactor who saved her life. Rather than choosing between one of them, she told herself that the best thing to do was to mend their relationship. Of course, she also wondered why Kim Hajin would say something like that. Yu Yan-ha sighed and began to think about what to say. Exactly 3 minutes later, she thought up a good idea. Come. After clearing her throat, Yu Yan-ha spoke. It's understandable. What? Your Appa is alive. Are you crazy? Chae Na-yoon glared at Yu Yan-ha as though she was ready to strangle her at any moment. Yu Yan-ha calmly received her aggressive gaze, then carefully continued. Did you know people feel a sense of kinship with others who share similar wounds? Sssss. The forest's leaves shook. Chae Na-yoon looked confused. Yu Yan-ha continued. That person, he's an orphan, probably because of a reason similar to yours. What? Chae Na-yoon's eyes widened. It was a reaction Yu Yan-ha expected. Chae Na-yoon was someone who didn't care about other people's past. In a way, it was a defensive mechanism, since if she dug up others' past, they could also dig up her own. Do you know that people are harassing him about it? Chae Na-yoon looked completely oblivious. In the first place, it wasn't something she could imagine. From her perspective, people who made fun of others for losing their parents couldn't exist. Chae Na-yoon swallowed hard and asked again, "He endured it? That's the only thing you're curious about?" Yoo-yeon-ha furrowed her brows as though she was tired. "Kim Ha-jin is being harassed because of you, because you told Jong-hak. That's... Na-yoon." Yoo-yeon-ha collected her breath before continuing. "You're not the only one with a painful past." At that moment, Chae Na-yoon's face went blank. Chae Na-yoon thought back to the day she talked to Shin Jong-hak because of what Kim Ha-jin said about her older brother. That was when harassment and bad rumors about Kim Ha-jin began. She was the source of it, yet she didn't do anything to stop it. She had purposely ignored it, something she couldn't deny. Still, she truly didn't expect that those delinquents would even dig up his past. Yoo-yeon-ha held back her laughter by clearing her throat. This was enough. Investing any more time and emotion didn't fit her personality. "Then I'm leaving now. I'm only a third party in all this, so talking about deep things will only cause misunderstandings. You can think the rest for yourself, Na-yoon." Yoo-yeon-ha gently stroked Chae Na-yoon's shoulder and turned to leave. Yeah." Chae Na-yoon's voice was much weaker than before. Yoo-yeon-ha felt like she gained points from both of them. Satisfied, she went back with a light heart. In the vast, silent forest, Chae Na-yoon was left all alone. She stared into the distance blankly. From the darkness, cool wind brushed against the forest's leaves. Seeing leaves shaking and falling, Chae Na-yoon took time to self-reflect. Huh, you sure got big." With a big grin, I looked down at Evandal's seed. The way it quivered to absorb blood was surprisingly cute. I already knew what the seed would look like once it hatched. At first, she would look like a 3 to 4-year-old child. But Evandal was a very special witch. Temporarily transforming herself into a cat or a dog shouldn't be a problem for her. Should I go with a cat or a dog? That was my worry. Raising a child at Cube was absolutely not allowed, but it was okay to own pets. In fact, Cube encouraged cadets to own pets as they supposedly helped with the cadets' mental health. There was even a pet adoption center inside Cube. "When will you hatch?" I gently rubbed the seed's belly. The seed quivered, almost as if it was ticklish. "You're so cute." I suddenly remembered Mung, a dog I used to own. He only liked Mom and Dad and never gave me a glance. But at this point, I miss everyone from Earth. At that moment, an alert popped up on the laptop I had open on my desk. "You obtained 253 SP. An incredible luck applies to your human relationship. Narrow escape from death, 2 of 9. A special stat, accumulation of luck, is partly unlocked." What's this? It was an alert I couldn't understand.
Chapter 58 Dorm 4 Penthouse. Chae Na-yoon lay on her bed in the large, empty room. Today was Sunday, and classes would resume tomorrow. She let out a deep sigh. The thought of tomorrow filled her with dread. The result of her bet with Kim Ha-jin must have spread by now, how she was completely overwhelmed. Some people would feel elated, while others would worry. Chae Na-yoon hoped people would feel schadenfreude rather than sympathy. But what worried her most was Kim Ha-jin himself. Smoking. She remembered her conversation with Kim Ha-jin in Norway. He had murmured that he quit smoking. At the time, she thought he was just trying to act cool. But with what she knew now, she realized he must have had a reason. With no one to rely on, he had to depend on something to relieve his pain. Chae Na-yoon fell flat on her bed. Change of weapon and position. Thinking about it now, Kim Ha-jin had experienced both first. She recalled that Kim Hajin was originally a swordsman. Even so, he gave up his sword. Most likely he realized his gift wasn't suitable for it. Abandoning everything he had worked for, choosing an unorthodox weapon like a gun, Chae Na-yoon wondered how he must have felt. She reached under her bed and pulled out a fairly big suitcase. Sitting up, she opened it. Immediately, treasured memories resurfaced. Inside were hundreds of pictures, memories she'd buried deep to avoid pain, but could never forget. Each photo was taken with people she loved most, her mother and her older brother. In the pictures, they were all smiling together. The young Chae Na-yoon looked so happy that she teared up just looking at her younger self. She held back her tears and picked up the short sword in the suitcase. The sword was only about a meter long, but it was enchanted with special magic. When it absorbed magic power, it could extend up to 4 meters. This mystical sword was a gift from U.C. Hook 8 years ago. For the first time in a long while, Chae Na-yoon held the sword in her hand. Though it looked like a toy, it was a deadly weapon, heavier than the world when she was young. What was my limit again? My magic power control wasn't good when I was 8, but I remember it being around 2 meters. She imbued her magic power with the sword. The blade shot up, reaching the ceiling. Wow, I grew a lot. Realizing the obvious, Chae Na-yoon stared at the sword for a long time. Then, just as her master had taught her, she enveloped the sword with magic power. Blue energy rose clearly around the blade. Zing! The sword resonated with her magic power, manifesting sword chi. Chae Na-yoon pressed her forehead against the sword and closed her eyes. The cold metal and the ringing of magic power, she engraved the sensation in her heart. Chapter 59. Sunday. I had a meeting with CUBE's faculty. It was about something called a specialized gift. The rumor that I'd defeated Chae Na-yoon and hit the 900-meter mark had already spread throughout CUBE. They asked if the rumor was true. After thinking for a bit, I nodded. Then they asked if I wanted to release the information to the public or keep it a secret. I chose to keep it a secret. In reality, it didn't matter. Either way, it would be revealed. The only difference was that keeping it a secret made me a product. If someone wanted information about me from CUBE, they'd have to buy it. Of course, since rumors had already spread, they'd only be paying for confirmation. Once the meeting ended, I left the administration building. With final exams in 2 weeks, almost no one was outside. Everyone was likely studying in the library or training at the fitness center. I headed back to my dorm. Opening the familiar door, I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. There were many things I needed to buy for the upcoming exam. Automatic tent, pork chops, chicken breast, frying pan, portable grill. I put all the camping equipment I could think of into the shopping basket. It cost 2 million won, but I made the purchase without hesitation. Instructors would check our bags before the final exam for personal weapons and defensive equipment. However, items like these were permitted. If they asked why I brought them, I had plenty of excuses. The simplest was, I prepared everything just in case. Your purchase has been completed. Right after the confirmation message popped up, Park Soo-hik sent me a message. Hajin, we made our website. Take a look. You're on our list of investors. www.shagency.com. Oh, it was an agency website. I checked it immediately. Cultivation of Trust. SH Agency. SH Agency Introduction. List of investors. List of affiliated hunters. The design was decent, but affiliated hunters? Was that just for show? I snickered and clicked on it. Jamie King. Date of birth, 08/03/1997. A hunter with 5 years of experience. Joshua. Date of birth, 09/01/2005. A hunter with 1 year of experience. Oh, there were actually some. Surprisingly, he had already found 2 hunters. I didn't know who they were, but the important thing was that they existed. I clicked on the list of investors and was immediately surprised. I thought I'd be the only one, but someone else had joined. Kim Hajin, Yu Yun-hei. She was quick as expected. With a grin, I closed the laptop. How's the website? It's clean and nice, but I think you should put Yu Yun-hei's name before mine on the list of investors. Even if she doesn't show it, she cares about such things. Why? I don't really care, but shouldn't you come first? You know, both alphabetically and by who came first? No, just do as I say. If left unchanged, the number of future investments could decrease. The next day. Standing in front of the classroom door, I took a deep breath. I was especially nervous today. The archery duel had about 70 spectators, so what happened was bound to spread. Now that 4 days had passed, it would be strange if anyone didn't know. Because of it, I was apprehensive about entering the classroom, but I still opened the door and walked in. Everyone's eyes immediately fell on me, and I could hear them murmuring. Ignoring them, I walked to my usual spot and sat down. Chae Na-yoon was not here yet. No, I thought she wasn't here, but hearing a familiar voice, I turned. There, I saw Chae Na-yoon looking different. Her long brown hair, which used to reach her chest, was now cut to her shoulders. Chae Na-yoon and Yu Yun-hei were talking in whispers. "So how's the short hair? You do look good in it." "Hair is hair. I do like that it's less hot, though. You should also cut your hair." "I like mine the way it is." "By the way, you didn't cut your hair because of the bet, did you?" "I did it because it was hot. Plus, you can't always win. Do I look like someone who would dwell on the past?" From what I could see, she was the same as always, except for her shorter hair. At that moment, Chae Na-yoon stretched and turned her head sideways. It felt like she was looking at me, so I quickly buried my face on my desk.
Chae Na-yoon pretended to stretch and peeked at Kim Hajin. He had just arrived, but was already studying hard. "Cool, I'm tired." Chae Na-yoon turned back to the front. "Oh, right, did you study?" At that moment, Shin Jong-hak, who was sitting behind her, asked. Chae Na-yoon replied simply, "I did enough." Theory classes only played a minor role in Cube. Combat exams and written exams had a 7-to-3 ratio in their impact on grades, but because combat exams better reflected cadets' abilities, those who ranked near the top in combat usually did well in written exams too. Of course, there were exceptions. "Enough? Then you should be around rank 600 again, haha." Thinking Chae Na-yoon, who was pretending to be fine, was really fine, Shin Jong-hak teased her insensitively. Chae Na-yoon glared at him fiercely. Feeling her hostility, Shin Jong-hak stopped snickering and awkwardly backed off. "Oh right, here are the phenomenon realm analysis notes you wanted yesterday." Kim Soo-ho quickly changed the topic. "Thanks, I'll copy them quickly and give them back." "Don't expect too much. Phenomenon realm analysis is difficult for everyone except Kim Soo-ho paused, realizing his mistake. "You're right. It's difficult for everyone except Kim Hajin. It's fine. Geez, you don't have to be so careful." Chae Na-yoon shook her head and put Kim Soo-ho's notebook in front of her. Although Yu Yun-hei was better at studying, she was untrustworthy. Even in reality, Yu Yun-hei had 2 sets of notes because she didn't want to lend her real one to Chae Na-yoon. Then, the theory class professor walked in. Now, quiet down. You know your exams are in 2 weeks, right? It'll cover everything up to Aurora reaction." The noisy classroom immediately became silent. The professor announced the scope of the test before starting class. Chae Na-yoon opened her notebook and grabbed her pen. "I'll study hard today. I have to show I'm different than before. But I'm a bit sleepy. This is the professor's fault." When she woke up after dozing off, there was a ton of material she needed to write down. "All right, here's a calculation problem, your favorite type. Now, I know some of you don't understand why you need to learn this, but once you go out into the real world and start entering dungeons, you'll be on your knees thanking me. If you don't want to cry tears of blood, don't slack off now." It seemed the professor had finished explaining the theory and moved on to example problems. Chae Na-yoon couldn't understand how time had passed so quickly. For this problem, I want somebody to help me solve it. Let's see. The professor paused and looked over the list of cadets. Chae-na-yoon immediately became nervous, worried he might call her name. She was already embarrassed because of the archery duel. The last thing she wanted was more embarrassment. Ah, Cadet Kim Hajin, come out. Thankfully, it wasn't Chae-na-yoon. Kim Hajin got up and walked to the podium as everyone watched. The professor handed him a hologram pen. He solved the problem without pause. His procedures and calculations were flawless, and even his penmanship was impeccable. Chae-na-yoon stared at the variables and numbers in a daze, then quickly began to copy everything down. Good, very good. The professor applauded as soon as Kim Hajin finished. Everyone else was busy copying what he wrote. Perfect, as expected, a rank 1 in the world. You can sit now. I'll do the explaining. Rank 1 in the world? Kim Hajin tilted his head in confusion, but went back to his seat without further questions. Look, everyone, this is what we call a flawless model answer. The professor gathered everyone's attention. This time, Chae-na-yoon also paid attention with widened eyes. Monday night, 10 p.m. I went to the shooting range after working out in the fitness center. I cranked up the difficulty to stage 10, where the targets also attacked, and started practicing. But while I practiced, faint shouting kept coming through the wall. Whap! Hayap! Something like that. Curious, I peered through the wall. In the shooting room next to me, Chae-na-yoon was brandishing a sword against a dummy she must have brought. It was strange seeing someone train with a sword in a shooting range, but I still felt good about it. In the original story, Chae-na-yoon switched to a sword about a year after graduating from Cube. The reason was the Genghis Khan artifact scramble in Mongolia. There, she encountered the djinn who killed her mother, but couldn't kill him with her bow. If Chae-na-yoon started honing her swordsmanship now, by graduation, she'd likely be a monster second only to Kim Soo-ho. Feeling pleased, I stretched and ended my practice. But as I left the shooting room, the door next to me also opened. Chae-na-yoon walked out, wiping her sweat. I instantly froze, and so did she. To be honest, I felt sorry for what I'd told Chae-na-yoon. Even though I meant to encourage her, I have hit a nerve twice. So before she could say anything, I spoke first. Did you finish your archery practice? Huh? Oh, yeah. Why can't I? No, keep up the good work. I wanted to end the conversation and leave, but Chae-na-yoon stopped me. Hey. I was a bit scared, but I turned around to face her. What? You, said you quit smoking. What? I was caught off guard by her unexpected words. Indeed, I did say that during our trip to Norway. To be exact, Chae-na-yoon overheard what I muttered to myself. I did. How did you quit? It seemed like a completely irrelevant question. Was she trying to offer me a poisoned cigarette or something? You don't need to know. It wasn't a question I could answer, so I cut her off and left. From behind, I could feel Chae-na-yoon's A's.
Chapter 59. A week before the final written exams. Ding! Ding! I was playing a VR game when I received 2 messages on my smartwatch. Hajin, do you have any plans to sell a study guide? Hajin, this is Yanji. Can you lend me your notes? I'll pay you back with ranking points when we become heroes. Please? People were getting desperate. Even those I'd never seen or talked to started messaging me. Not long ago, they were talking behind my back, calling me a delinquent. I had no intention of helping any of them. Who even was Yanji? Yeah, no. I blocked them. Another message came in. What now? This time, the sender was Rachel. Can you perhaps help me with this problem? It's a calculation problem, but it's too hard. Rachel sent a picture of a problem. I quietly began to solve it. 4 days before the written exams, Friday. The head of the chameleon troupe took a deep breath in front of an unfamiliar door. Boss, no one is going to notice your disguise, so you don't have to worry. Remember, your name is So E-Jean. Don't forget it. Find me if anything happens. I'll be in the infirmary. Jane's voice rang in her ears. Just as she said, the disguise was perfect. The cadet named So E-Jean had a similar build and hair color, so it didn't take much magic power to disguise herself. "Go in." Boss nodded and opened the door. As classes would begin soon, the room was full of cadets. She had already memorized everyone's faces. She walked to the group So In-jin often hung out with. When that moment, "Hey, So In-jin!" Someone struck her on the head. She wasn't hurt, but she was dazed. Thinking back, she stiffly turned her head to the side. There she saw a man she didn't recognize. "Did you study well?" The man looked down at her. She replied as she practiced. I did." "What were you doing yesterday? You weren't respond—" Before he could finish, she sat down in her seat. "Hajin!" Immediately a pair of arms wrapped around her neck. She was startled, but not as shocked as before. Staying calm, she looked back at the girl clinging to her, feeling like a huge cicada had landed on her. Just like a cicada, the girl could be killed with one fist. The door opened. Boss turned toward it and saw the reason she had infiltrated this class. She stared at Kim Hajin, who walked in while yawning, and met her eyes. He immediately froze. What the hell? I gazed at a girl I wouldn't usually care about. I didn't know her name, but I knew she was in my class. The way she interacted with her friends looked completely normal. But I could see through her. My gift, observation and reading, could perfectly unmask Jane's gift. That girl wasn't a normal cadet, but the boss of the chameleon troupe. She was likely here to observe Kim Suho, but still, this never happened in the original story. "Hey, why did you stop being active on social media? Did you find a boyfriend?" Cadets who didn't know this touched her here and there. It seemed the girl she disguised as was a pushover. "Oh, boyfriend? What do you mean? I just slept because I was tired." Boss responded awkwardly. I broke out in cold sweat as I watched this. With one wrong move, their limbs and bones could break. "Ah, Aijin, your cheeks are chubbier than usual. Did you eat ramen before sleeping?" One of the girls pinched Boss's cheeks. Boss's face stiffened. I opened my mouth almost instinctively. "Hey! Hey!" Maybe I wasn't loud enough, they didn't hear me, and Boss's cheeks were already stretched to the limit. I could see her clenching her fists. "Hey!" In the end, I yelled loudly. This time I went overboard. The classroom fell silent and everyone stared at me. I didn't care. "Can you shut up? I'm trying to study." I pointed at the notebook on my desk. If Boss exploded, everyone in this room could die. "What, you think you can tell us what to do just because you're smart?" They grumbled but stopped messing with Boss thanks to my interference. Afterwards, Boss gave me an odd look, then buried her face on the desk. The rest started talking behind my back. During the entire written exam week, I carefully observed So In-jin, who Boss was disguised as. I didn't just observe her. I even talked to her, like a friend, hoping to get some SP. She talked like a generic high school girl trying to sound cute, which didn't suit her at all. And she even bought me an ice cream. I didn't eat it, and it was still in my refrigerator. Anyway, the written exams ended without much trouble. Cube's weekend after the exams was desolate. Cadets who'd pulled all-nighters to study were focused on recovering. The weekend went by quickly. Now focus! Finally, Monday arrived. It was the day the final exam would really begin. The 1,300 first-year cadets went to a harbor in Busan, and everyone was on ships separated by class. We will now begin the baggage inspection. As soon as cadets got on the ship, the instructors began the baggage inspection. 3 instructors each called on cadets, and it eventually became my turn. I entered a room where an instructor was waiting and handed him my magic pouch. Weight? 10 kg. What's in it?
Food, tent, frying pan, torch, grill, things like that. I'm opening it. Why ask what's inside if you're going to open it? I grumbled inwardly as the instructor pulled everything out. He stared at the assortment of items in disbelief. Why did you prepare so much? Well, the announcement said the exam would last a whole week, so I had a general idea of what it would be. I prepared accordingly. Clever. The instructor grinned but still checked everything carefully.
Then he sent me back. Thankfully, he didn't find out about Evandel's seed. I brought it since it could hatch at any time. He must have thought it was a big almond or something. After the inspection, I sat on a bench near the ship's bow. In the distance, I could see an island coming into view. Countless drones were flying around the island like seagulls. I'm a bit nervous. Now that the exam was right in front of me, I started to feel nervous. This exam would be difficult, especially since I couldn't use my Desert Eagle. No, I could use it. I just had to avoid being seen by those drones. And there was a simple way to avoid their watch. I just had to hack into them. Now, I will explain how this exam will work. Once the baggage inspection finished, an instructor came out to explain the rules. In 30 minutes, you will split into groups of 10 and land in different areas of that island. You will stay there for 5 days, and you will have to survive on your own. We will, however, provide half a day's worth of food. The food supply had decreased from a full day in the original story to half a day. At the instructor's words, the ship became noisy. The exam is simple. The number of points you get will be your grade. Obtaining points is also simple. There are wild animals and monsters living on that island. Wild animals are for you to eat, and monsters are what you hunt to gain points. Depending on their rank and grade, you will get 1 to 10 points. You should have all received special smartwatches for this exam. Scan their corpses with them and you'll see the number of points. The instructor's explanation continued. In summary, cadets could steal, sell, and buy points from each other. They could eliminate other cadets, gaining an extra 5 points plus all the points the eliminated cadet had. However, cadets could only fight each other after the first 12 hours. And finally, you see that tower in the middle? You are eliminated if your smartwatch is stolen, so you can head to the tower and wait for the end of the exam. Once the explanation ended, heavy tension filled the ship. No one was talking. Soon the instructors brought out boats. Cadets would now be transported to the island in groups of 10. Che Na-yoon, Jin Yu-yoon, Selen Hayes. The starting group was important, as it determined your potential teammates or enemies. Kim Hajin, Jin Se-ha, Yu Jung, Wang Shifu, Blin, Rachel, Tara. I got on the boat and exchanged awkward looks with 9 other cadets. Rachel was also in my group. Soon the boat set off. I gazed at the island and thought, Rachel would be exposed to the greatest danger in this exam. Lancaster, who already resented her, had become a bigger threat in this world and was more aggressive. Here's your stop. Before I could plan my actions, the boat arrived at the island. The moment we landed, I talked to Rachel. Rachel, see? Would you like to team up with me? I didn't expect her to agree, and Rachel shook her head as I expected. I'm more comfortable going alone. That's what Rachel said. However, I didn't back down. I gave her my exam smartwatch's live coordinates. This exam smartwatch had 3 functions: scanning monsters, point trading, and location sharing. The last 2 were there to encourage teaming up. Just in case you change your mind. I pointed at my watch. Rachel smiled and left. Meanwhile, the other cadets murmured about me being rejected. Since they didn't seem useful, I also went on my own, running into the forest. After finding a random tree to lean on, I opened my laptop. It took a reasonable amount of SP to access the drone's servers. Once I paid, my laptop screen split into 60 smaller screens. Thanks to my gift, my eyesight could analyze all of them at once. Most of the important cadets were alone. Che Na-yoon was already preparing to get lost. Kim Soo-ho was fighting a monster, and Yu Yuen-ha was the only one teamed up with someone. If I remember correctly, the girl with her was rank 15. It seems she had already won over a skilled cadet. But they weren't who I was interested in. There. I soon found a group of 5 cadets from the repeater class. I had already checked the faces of those who could be threats. In the original story, only 2 of those 5 were djinns, but it's likely all 5 were djinns in this world. However, there was still time before they would get active. Cadets weren't allowed to fight each other for the next 12 hours. Before then, I guess I should find a camping spot.
Chapter 60. An hour had passed since I entered the island. I was still making my way through the forest, heading toward my chosen camping spot, a place near a river with a mountain on one side. It was the kind of place ancient sages would have called back to the mountain, face to the water. I was thoroughly prepared for exploration. In my right hand was my laptop, constantly displaying drone footage of the island. And in my pocket was a map generated by the Book of Truth. In other words, I was fully equipped with cheat keys. But before I could reach the camping spot, I ran into a monster. A clown monkey. Just as its name suggested, it was a monkey with colorful spots on its body. However, its face was grotesque for a monkey, and its size, about as big as an adult man, would startle anyone seeing it for the first time. Jesus, it looks horrifying. Clown monkeys were low intermediate, grade 9 monsters. Of course, there were individual differences, but the one in front of me didn't look any stronger than average. I took out my training handgun. Because it was quick, it would be troublesome if I didn't finish it in one blow, so I aimed for its vital point, its tail. Clown monkeys were innately nimble, but without their tails, they lost their sense of balance and became easy to deal with. That was easy. After scanning the clown monkey's corpse with my smartwatch, I continued on my way. About 30 minutes later, a river stream appeared. The water source was in the northmost area of the island, flowing down and splitting into 8 branches. This river seemed to be a branch of a branch, but it was still a reliable water source. Behind the river was a rocky mountain, and above it, a dense forest, an ideal camping spot. I took out my tent, which looked like a small disc and could be opened by imbuing magic power. When I put in some of Stigma's magic power, the disc moved by itself and formed a huge tent. Wow! I entered the tent. It was cozier than I imagined, with furniture inside, a bed and a small table. Since nothing major would happen at the beginning of the exam, I decided to get some sleep. With a big yawn, I jumped onto the bed. 9 hours after the start of the exam. The blazing sun had set, and darkness descended on the island and sea. In the fiercely blowing wind, Rachel sat on a rocky mountain, catching her breath. She had set out alone after rejecting several offers to team up, but now she felt the need for a team more than anyone. The biggest reason was food. Rachel looked down at her food supply with mixed feelings. Only half of the provided food remained. She had eaten just 2 hours ago, but after scuffling with a monster, she was hungry again. Cadets had to find their own food here, either by searching for edible plants or hunting wild animals. Anyone could guess that wild animals stayed near rivers. But even if she hunted wild animals, there was the problem of cooking them. Skinning, deboning, and preparing the meat. Rachel had no experience with butchery. She'd hunted 6 monsters already, so she could trade with other cadets. But points were precious. She was trying to eat to gain points, so spending points to buy food didn't make sense. As Rachel pondered with a grave look, a faint scent of meat tickled her nose. She stood up and looked down the mountain. Below, she could faintly see the red glow of a fire. It stood out in the darkness. There were likely cadets there. From the smell, they had to be grilling meat. Rachel swallowed her saliva. Although she still had half her food supply left, she knew that she had to save it. The desperate side would be at a disadvantage in a trade, and the provided food was clean and trustworthy. Rachel jumped down. After running down from a 300-meter height in just 3 minutes, she reached the ground and chased after the smell. Soon, she found 5 cadets cooking a giant boar. The cadets noticed her and turned their gazes. 3 male cadets and 2 female cadets, a well-balanced group. Rachel stared at them silently. "What do you want?" They put up their guard. She estimated their battle prowess. However, it was still too early to fight other cadets. Rachel pointed at the boar. "I'd like to buy some." "Oh, you're working alone." A male cadet who seemed to be the group's leader stood up. He approached her and held out his greasy hand. Rachel tried to shake his hand, but the man pulled it back before she could. "Oh, my hand is dirty."
He laughed heartily and continued, "You're welcome to join in. We're all cadets here. That's fine with you guys, right?" He turned and gave the others a meaningful look, which Rachel couldn't see. He then turned back. "Oh, right. You must not know our names. We know yours." Rachel silently nodded. He scratched his neck and spoke. "Well, Rachel C. is famous. I'm Ju Yo-hun." "Ugh, where am I?" Che Na-yoon and wandered in the woods for 14 hours. In this time, she'd hunted 9 monsters, likely putting her near the top of the leaderboard. It was the result of using both a bow and a sword. There's no end. She plowed through vines and tall grass, but no matter how much she walked, she couldn't find a useful source of water or food. She hadn't even run into another cadet. Now she was exhausted. When she was on the verge of passing out, a faint torchlight appeared in the distance. A possible campfire. She ran toward the light, and as she approached, she could smell a spicy fragrance. After escaping the endless field of tall grass, she saw the source of the light. There she saw Kim Hajin munching on a piece of meat. With chopsticks in hand and a plate full of meat, he stared at her. "What?" He tilted his head and asked, "What?" Che Na-yoon swallowed hard. Although she preferred high-class food, she had moved for 14 hours with little rest or food. She'd long since finished her provided food. If it was edible, she was ready to eat it. Che Na-yoon first observed Kim Ha-jin and his surroundings. There was a huge, cozy-looking tent behind him. The light wasn't from a campfire, but a portable grill. He had a table, a chair, a frying pan, and packaged meat being cooked. What the heck did you get all these from?" "I prepared them for the exam." "What? How did you know about the exam to have all these prepared?" "I brought them just in case." "Don't you know I'm #1 in the world?" I tapped my head and spoke. "I'm pretty damn smart." "Yeah, good for you." Che Na-yoon's sarcasm lasted only for a moment. She swallowed hard, looking at the meat. Meanwhile, Kim Ha-jin wondered if their encounter was brought about by luck. Thinking about it, it did seem like points had walked up to him. "Hungry?" Che Na-yoon nodded without speaking. "How much food do you have left?" "I lost it when I was fighting a monster." She had already eaten it, so she told a little lie. "Really, I'm a bit clumsy."
Kim Ha-jin crossed his arms and fought, while Che Na-yoon held her breath, waiting for him to speak. "How many points do you have?" Che Na-yoon immediately breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Things were going as she hoped. She had killed 9 monsters and obtained a total of 35 points. But she didn't tell the truth. 25. "Then give me half." Half? Half. It was an expensive price for a single day's meal. "Yep, but in exchange, you're sleepy, right? I'll also lend you a sleeping bag. Just say no if you don't want to." No, I mean, yes, I want to." Che Na-yoon turned on her exam smartwatch. This watch could recognize other smartwatches within a 3-meter radius. Kim Ha-jin. Point trading. Location sharing. She clicked on point trading. Half of 25 was 12.5, but only whole numbers could be used in trading. After thinking for a bit, she sent 12 points to Kim Ha-jin and quietly sat down next to him. After confirming he received the points, Kim Ha-jin gave her well-cooked pork chops. "But are you okay with just this? They're pork chops. I'll have to eat to live." Che Na-yoon had heard that things like this were common in dungeons and towers. She put a pork chop in her mouth. Was it because she was hungry? She found it quite delicious. Then she saw Kim Ha-jin dipping his pork chop in a sauce. She did the same and found it even tastier. The two of them continued eating for 20 minutes. During this time, neither spoke. Now I'm full." Once her hunger faded, Che Na-yoon felt a bit awkward. She wasn't particularly close to Kim Ha-jin. In fact, their relationship was better described as uncomfortable. Just as she was thinking about leaving, here, Kim Ha-jin handed her a bottle of water. Che Na-yoon stared at it, hesitating. "It's mineral water, not river water. Did this guy have mind-reading abilities?" Che Na-yoon let out a dry cough and took the water. Gulp, gulp, kya.
After emptying half of it in one go, she let out a satisfied sigh. By the way, what's that? She suddenly noticed a ring on Kim Hajin's index finger. Kim Hajin's face stiffened. For a moment, he rubbed his ring without speaking. It was as though he was choosing his words. Seeing his solemn yet flustered reaction, a flash of insight arose in Chain Iron's mind. Ah, never mind. I'm not curious at all. I might not act like it, but I can take a hint. It must be a keepsake from his family. Chain Ayun finished the rest of the water without waiting for Kim Hajin's answer. Meanwhile, Kim Hajin stared at Chain Ayun with the eyes of a dead fish. I never said you could drink it all. The next morning arrived. Birds chirped and the howling of monsters rang out from the forest. Waking up to the noise, I got up from my bed. Though I felt a bit stiff, this much was a luxury on this island. I left the tent to bask in the sunlight. However, no sunlight shone outside the tent. Is it a polar night? The outside world was that dark. It was likely because of the magicians in the island's central tower. I looked around. On the ground, Chain Ayun was buried in her sleeping bag, still asleep. Last night must have been cold as only her face peeked out. In a way, she looked like a caterpillar. Tong! Suddenly, the seed sitting on my tent table jumped up. By the looks of it, it had already finished its meal. It must have felt my gaze as it began to quiver. Why are you so cute? I tickled the seed and wrapped it with a new gauze. Then I packed up the tent. I had no intention of staying in the same place. Chain Ayun was still using the sleeping bag, but I could just gift it to her. Now that cadets were allowed to fight each other, I had no plans to sit still. I planned to pick fights aggressively, especially against dangerous individuals. Of course, I wasn't allowed to kill. Some of the djinns here didn't even know they were djinns, and in reality, they weren't djinns yet. That was the difference between a djinn who contracted another djinn and a djinn who contracted a devil. In the case of the former, djinns were supplied with magic power by their contracted djinns, so they could avoid going berserk, and their contracts were also less strict. These djinns were often treated as expendables, being abandoned or killed if they failed their mission. On the other hand, djinns who directly contracted devils were rarer. Examples of such djinns were Sven, Yunhook, and Lancaster. But because directly contracting devils caused large side effects, the only cadet on this island who managed to overcome this side effect was a man named Ju Yuhon. I'll have to go higher. For now, my goal was reaching the World Tree located in the center of the island. Although it had a grandiose name, it was just an extremely big tree. Its roots were in the center of the island, and it was called the World Tree solely because of its size. In just 24 hours from the start of the exam, Yu Yunha managed to form her own group. It was a small team of 5, with Yu Yunha as the leader. Utilizing their strength, Yu Yunha was amassing points easily and efficiently. Yenhasi, I found someone. A sharpshooter named Rose whispered to Yu Yunha, but before waiting for orders, she drew her bow. But just as she was about to fire, Yu Yunha's whip flew in like lightning and snatched her bow away. Why? Don't. Yu Yunha glared at her with stern eyes. You can't touch that man. Isn't that person rank 934? Rankings didn't change until the final exam, and in accordance with the rules, every cadet wore a name tag with their rank. But even without a name tag, the man Rose was aiming at was someone that most people knew. He was known for his gun-related gift, among other things, the rank 934 cadet Kim Hajin. No, you can't win against him. She cut her off. At that moment, Kim Hajin made his move. Almost as if to save Yu Yunha from having to explain, he climbed up a giant tree with impeccable movements. After reaching the peak of a 150-meter tree in a few breaths, he disappeared into the dense leaves. This series of unrealistic maneuvers left Rose dumbstruck. Yu Yunha spoke sternly. See that? I just saved your life, Rose C. To that man, a rank is just a number. If you had let go of that bowstring, you would have lost for sure. Not only that, the rest of us would have been in trouble. There are many hidden dragons in this world. It's the same reason the Hero Association can't do anything about hunters of the vast expanse. Next time, don't do anything before I give the order. Rose nodded like a child being scolded by her teacher. Also, about that man being uncharacteristically strong, keep it a secret. Why? Rose couldn't help but question this order. Yu Yunha gave a brief explanation. Because he might become one of our family members. For the record, I like people with heavy mouths. Rose shuddered. Essence of the Strait, the world's second-ranked guild.
For Rose, a rank 68 cadet, it was too enticing an offer. Ah, yes, I'll keep it a secret, until death. Good. After smiling generously at Rose, who was as obedient as a dog, Yu Yanha stared at the giant tree Kim Hajin had climbed. It was a monstrous tree that even the most courageous would hesitate to climb. Just looking up at it made one's neck hurt, but Kim Hajin had climbed to its peak in mere minutes. Should I modify Kim Hajin's physical ability rating? Yu Yanha began to think about her report. Tering. At that moment, a message arrived on her smartwatch, ending her thoughts. Ah, Agency contacted us. Let's go back. People who shared locations could also message each other. This was likely something Yu Yanha was the first to discover. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.